Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Security Squawk podcast. I am your co-host, Brian, with Andre and Randy here. And Randy, you're clearly in a remote location in a hotel.
Undisclosed, yes.
Undisclosed. How's everybody doing this week?
Doing well. First week of school back here in the South.
Yep, same here.
Cool. So welcome to the show, everyone. It's, we are pretty much the longest running cybersecurity podcast on the internet. We're your go-to source for breaking down complex cybersecurity issues into simple, easy to understand language. So you really start to grasp the impact of what, cybersecurity means to you, what it means to potentially your job, your life, how this is going to impact you now and in the future. Because I always say this, but I think we're just scratching the surface here with how bad cybersecurity is going to impact people's lives in the future. And it's interesting to me because we have this thing called AI that's kind of sitting over top of, I guess, the buzz around cybersecurity. And I guess me going into this business, right? And we all run businesses that deal with cybersecurity. The kind of thought process was the natural evolution was kind of like internet, getting online, getting people, efficiently working, communicating. And then along the way, this security thing cropped up. And we still haven't really fully dealt with that yet. And now we got AI coming into the mix. So it's going to be interesting and kind of like a back theme as we talk about all this stuff, guys, is like, should the focus really be on AI, and should we still be focusing our efforts and energies on security before we enter into this world of AI? Does it even matter? Am I kind of, worrying about things we shouldn't be worrying about? Or can both problems or both initiatives exist simultaneously and we still come out on the other end with a good outcome? I don't see that being probable. So I want to kind of float that out there as an early overarching idea to kind of discuss as we go through our topics for today. So, but before we jump into those topics, remember, for this valuable insight and information that the three of us give you, we have a fee. It's a simple fee. All you have to do is help us grow this show. And you can do that by doing simple things like sharing out this content when you see it in your feed, sharing out our podcast on any of the podcasting platforms, giving us a like and a subscribe over on YouTube. We're on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you can get a podcast, you can find Security Squawk Podcast. So when you're on those platforms consuming us, just hit that like button, hit that share button, rate us on a podcasting platform. And that's how you help us grow and the show and pay the fee. And we keep showing up every week and giving you the goods. So guys, today we're diving into a bunch of different ransomware attacks, a bunch of different aspects of it. A lot of ransomware attacks we're going to discuss today are at different points in their timeline. Some are just experiencing their ransomware attack. Some have been experiencing it for a while. And some we're going to kind of do follow-ups on what's been happening since they've been ransomed and what are the repercussions and what are the outcomes that these organizations have and are experiencing. Because I think they all tell a different story for sure. It's amazing how dynamic these stories are with these different organizations, how it impacts them, how they handle them. So let's get into it. I mean, let's go right into our conversations. But that's the interesting thing that I'm seeing as we're going through and putting together the show is there's not a whole lot of common themes between these events other than their files get encrypted and they got hacked, right? That's why we're talking about them. But when you start to peel back the layers of the onion and see how they were attacked, how they dealt with the situation, what were the things that were done to the business after the event, they all tell a different story. And it's amazing to me, all the different things that are happening and how dynamic ransomware attacks have become here in 2024. So let's take a look at some of the recent high profile incidents. Let's start off with this McLaren Hospital incident. We were one of the first people on the internet to kind of say, like, hey, there's a problem over here with this hospital. Sure enough, over the last week, they've been more inclined to admit that they're dealing with a ransomware attack. And it's gotten the attention of some people along the way too. So let's dive into it. Where's McLaren at, and what are they saying as of August 13th, 2024?
Well, they're
definitely coming.
Randy's on a delay.
Yeah, I was going to say that according to the reports, they still have services down. As you mentioned, this is 2 years in a row now that they have had some type of a cyber attack. And, at the end of the day, it's affecting patients. Surgeries are having to be delayed. Ambulances are having to be rerouted. So it's really a shame.
Yeah, I mean, we were mentioning those types of things could happen as we were talking about it last week. We were seeing reports of diversions, and then they stopped. Do we have any information on, like, it almost seems to me in the beginning there, they almost tried to like reel it in a little bit. Am I wrong on that?
There has not been a whole lot of information that's come out.
Right.
They have basically acknowledged that they are dealing with a cyber attack. Now, this was as of a few days ago. They're saying that non-emergency appointments, tests, and procedures, all that's still down. And they're not saying when it's going to be back, and they're not saying if any patient data was actually released. So not a whole lot.
And what's the situation with the organization? Do we have any more information on the reports that were coming out early on about people needing to take PTO or some other form of, whether they go on unemployment or whatever? Is there anything?
Yeah, it seems this is starting to become a common thread. If a company gets hacked, the employer is not going to pay and say either use your PTO or go claim unemployment, but we're not going to pay you to sit and do nothing, I guess, right? I don't know. I think a hospital, people are still working. You still need them. Maybe a call center when the phones and the internet are down, then okay, I get it. But it seems like now they're depending on us taxpayers to foot the bill because they're not doing what they should be doing in their company.
Yeah, so it looks like a few hospitals are on ambulance diversion, but for the most part, they feel like their emergency departments continue to be operational and open to patients arriving for care. It just seems like they're trying to muddle through this the best they can without making it seem like a big deal. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I just feel like this is going to backfire at some point. Like, it's just going to get, whatever they're trying to do is just going to get too ugly, and it's going to backfire.
They're definitely walking a fine line between not enough disclosure, and there is a line between that and too much disclosure. And then if you don't disclose it in the exact right way, you could open yourself up to lawsuits and all kinds of stuff like that. And, theoretically, if they downplay it, we've seen how I believe it's SEC has come after companies that are publicly traded because information wasn't released to the shareholders, because that affects the price of the stock, and information was withheld. So I would say also potentially you have a case there. If they don't release just the right amount of information, they could find themselves in trouble with the government because they're a publicly traded company. And that could affect their stock price.
So as I dig in a little deeper here, guys, I'm gonna bring this one up for discussion because it's very interesting to me. So give me 1 second here. I'm gonna share. Sorry,
That picture of a hoodie, that's a hacker, right?
That is a hacker. That's actually you, but we're not going to tell anyone that. So I'm just going to bring up this article to talk about kind of the response here that we're seeing. And this is this kind of stuff that you see happen, right?
Yes.
The press is trying to get answers, right? And we have this article up from the Detroit Free Press, and this woman, Kristen Jordan Seamus, she seems to be covering this story a lot because I've seen several articles written by her on this. She's doing her best to try to get to the bottom and get some information and answers out there. As she says in this article, details are scarce about what data was leaked in the McLaren cyber attack, but she went to the Michigan AG because probably she's not getting answers from the hospital, right? So she goes to the Michigan AG, and I just want to kind of read the answers that this attorney general has given, and then we can kind of discuss it, right? So she just kind of says details about what information is scarce. And then this is the response. These events serve as a clear warning that our most private information is under constant threat from cyber criminals. I encourage everyone to be diligent in safeguarding their accounts and to be on the lookout for any indications of personal data exploitation. Unfortunately, at this time, information is scarce as to what information may have been exposed. While more than 30 other states have laws requiring state notification of significant breaches, Michigan is not among them, and consumer protection agencies like ours often only learn of these attacks by media reporting. So what are your thoughts on that statement? There's a lot to be said there. I mean, number one, Michigan's behind the times when it comes to data breach reporting laws.
Yes.
Number two, I like this whole paragraph right here. There's so many things wrong with this in my mind. It's not even funny. Okay, yes, let's state the obvious. Let's state what Brian and Andre and Randy come on the podcast every week and say that, you know, cyber criminals are after your private information like crazy right now. And then she says, I encourage everyone to be diligent in safeguarding their accounts and to be on the lookout for any indications of personal data.
Like we have control over what McLaren does with our data.
No, right. This is the problem.
Yes.
Thank you, Randy. This is the wrong attitude to put this on the patients of the hospital or to put it on any individual who is just doing business with another entity who didn't protect their information like they should have. And our response is, well, I encourage everyone to be diligent. What the hell does that even mean? Like, yeah, I know how to be diligent because I'm a cybersecurity expert. But if you say that to my mom, she's going to be like, what do I do?
Well, and you could have an account with McLaren that you have a 45-character password and 2 forms of multi-factor on top of that, which I don't know if they have that or not. Let's assume they do. But it doesn't matter because the account was still breached by criminals. And so telling us to be diligent about our accounts literally means nothing. Now, you can keep up with your own data, and you ought to subscribe to something like Have I Been Pwned or something like that. So you know when your data has been breached. You can freeze your credit accounts. But we literally have no control over what our doctors do with our data other than some compliance statements that we have to sign, you know, before they'll look at us. Sorry, you're about to get me started here, man. I need to take a deep breath.
Yeah, she should have.
Go
ahead, guys. Go ahead.
All right, my bad. Randy, you got to help me out. I was in the middle of doing something on my other screen. You got to.
Sorry, my daughter walked in. I'm sorry. And
No
she
worries.
did close the door. Close the door. Sorry about that, guys. School starts tomorrow for us, you know.
It happens.
All right. So what I was saying, what I was going to say is that she should have saved her sentence there, and she should have now turned that effort to the legislators to say this is what the Michigan, legislators need to do. They need to put better laws in place that hold these hospitals or hold these companies that have our personal information. So that I, as the, attorney general, can now make sure that my prosecutors go after these CEOs. That's what she should have said.
Yes. And why isn't she coming out saying the state of Michigan is going to diligently pursue, McLaren and make them get to the bottom of this and make sure they're following the law and blah, 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 blah. And we're on the side of the consumer and we're fighting for you. Like, there's none of that here. Like I said, y'all are getting me started. This is a little bothersome.
It is, but it's also good. It should be bothersome to you, Randy, because it's indicative of the state of where we're at right now. And it can be a lot better if people would just put some effort into this stuff, right? It's just a complete lack of effort from where we stand, in our opinion, right? It's like, that's what it is, right? I mean, it's not knowledge, it's not resources, because we see billion-dollar companies getting hacked all the time. So,
right.
Anything else we want to talk about with this stuff? But I think that's where we're at. I mean, we got basically a hospital who's being super tight-lipped based on how what they've experienced in the situation that they're in. Prior to this, they were hacked once before, and now we're seeing them deal with this situation because it's interesting. We're seeing a major hospital organization, a major company in the U.S. dealing with their second major ransomware attack. So it's interesting to see how they go about this the second time around. And really what they've learned and how they're going to use that to their advantage or not, right? And we're seeing it, right? We're seeing things like go use your PTOs or employees, which, really, guys, Crown was the first time I saw that. Like, have you really seen that before Crown? No, like, I haven't really seen companies literally going and saying, go collect, unemployment or take time off. Crown was like the first one where I really saw it publicly.
Crown is the forklift company.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They man.
But all of a sudden in the last 3 months, now all these companies are doing it. So which law firm was it? Was it Kroll? Which incident response firm was it that is now coming in and giving advice to these companies, telling them, go tell your employees to go do this? Because we did it with other companies. Look, because the same companies are responding to this stuff. That's the other, taboo thing that nobody wants to talk about is there's like 3 or 4 companies who deal with all these incident responses.
Right. They may have just read it in the news, and so maybe they're just thinking that's what they need to do. I don't know. Maybe they got a small-time lawyer that read it.
I don't think it's small time. I think this is what the big time lawyers are advising these companies.
Right.
Like, go tell like when it's happening on like day 1 or day 2 of the event, and that's what we're seeing is employees coming to the internet, going to Reddit, going to Twitter within a day or 2 of these attacks saying, I'm being told to go collect unemployment or I'm being told to go on PTO.
But it doesn't make sense. I mean, not what you're saying doesn't make sense, but if I'm a middle class employee at the hospital making, let's just say $75,000 a year, unemployment's going to give me what, $300-400 and a deep EBT card to go and spend $100 at Walmart. So it's not even going to cover my expenses. And looking at the revenue of McLaren, $6.4 billion net revenue. So they've got some money in their account, So why are they being so cheap? And it's one thing to say, hey, look, our payment, like the way we pay you, that system is down. That's why we need you to go to unemployment. But if you're telling them to use PTO, you're basically saying we could still pay you. We just don't want to pay you from our general funds. We want you to use your time off.
Yeah.
Right. Lower another liability of theirs. And I just noticed something. You know, we were talking about the Michigan Attorney General, you know, saying things that are irrelevant. And our very next article's also talking about Michigan government and their response to this. Maybe do we have people out there that are from Michigan that can chime in and tell us, hey, what's going on in Michigan? Why don't they have reporting, you know, laws or compliant, reporting laws for things like this? Why is their government acting so clueless? You know,
where's Ryan O'Hara when we need him?
Where's who?
Ryan O'Hara when we need him.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Is he downstairs? Go call him.
Yeah.
Randy, help me out. What were you referring to?
So we have an article about the lawmakers calling for increased penalties.
That's the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Let's get into that one because
right out of Michigan, where that attorney general was from.
Yeah. So this is what I was talking about at the top of the show, where I was saying it's getting the attention of a lot of people. And obviously, this ransomware attack, second one on McLaren, is getting the attention of Michigan lawmakers. So where are we at with this? What has what lawmakers are calling for increased penalties for ransomware attacks against Michigan hospitals? And why are they focusing in on that? Is this knee jerk? And does this really get this state up to where it needs to be in terms of its laws, right? Like it seems to me like you're just focusing in on this because a major hospital in your state got attacked, and now you're like, oh, we got to have increased ransomware attack penalties for ransomware attacks against Michigan hospitals. Like that just screams to me somebody who's really clueless about what's going on out there. Like if you just want to focus on that narrow of a slice of what's going on out there, you're missing the boat, in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
I was gonna let Andre chime in.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna steal your thunder, but I'll say it anyways then. So you had mentioned in the green room that these cyber attacks and the people behind it, 99.999% of them are not here in the United States. So what difference does it make if you change the penalties from 5 years of prison to 20 years in prison? Because you're not going to be able to go after, especially on the state level, you're not going to be able to go after them anyways.
Yeah, and I would say the law sounds really dumb to us, and what she's trying to do, but it would probably make a great political ad. Representative passed law making tough crime, tough laws against cyber criminals or whatever. And it's like the laws of Michigan don't apply to Russia or China or Eastern Europe or wherever this is. I did a video. And what we'd love to see from them is, hey, let's have requirements for how you report a cyber attack. We've had those in Texas for several years. We have laws that are on top of HIPAA that make HIPAA more stringent. We've had those for over a decade. We've had these the cyber incident reporting laws, I think for 5 years now. Come on, Michigan, stop making fun of Texas and catch up. This is 2024.
So is the approach that, in your opinion, I'll ask this question to both of you guys. I don't want to do that. I almost closed out the podcast. Get my train of thought back here. Sorry about that. So what you said there, Randy, where you're like, look, going about it this way isn't the best way to go about it. Focusing on the guys across the pond who are probably doing this, who we couldn't find them if we put $80 million bounty on their head. You're right. I mean, that's a situation. Most states have dealt with this through making the hospitals, and I'll say hospitals in this case because that's what we're talking about, but all businesses this should apply to. The states need to make the businesses in their state do things when it comes to cybersecurity. One is, in my opinion, do more to protect data, right? Make them do more. Make them follow a framework. Hold them accountable to it when they don't follow it. The other side of it is you need to make sure that you have reporting requirements in place. Somebody shouldn't be allowed to decide when, where, and how, and what they're going to release for information when they're dealing with this. And this is exactly what we're seeing with McLaren. They've been through this before. They know what the deal is at this point. They know what they're allowed to say or what they have to say and when they have to say it. And they're clearly playing their cards very close to the vest when it comes to this stuff. It's no secret if you watch this show, I'm a huge proponent of people being upfront and forthright with their information when dealing with a cyber attack, because it helps other hospitals, it helps other cyber defenders deal with the current threat that's out there if they have information. So I don't agree with any, like, this is like, Randy, you want to write a course on how not to do a cyber response or a ransomware response? I think this would be a nice case study for that course. Mm-hmm. So, thoughts, Andre?
No, I think the McLaren's going to really need to clean house, because just same thing, man. For it to happen 2 years in a row, for it to happen twice in the last X amount of years, they're really going to need to see. And just imagine if it turns out it happened a similar way or the same way. That's just like, so it happened and nobody did anything about it, but the executives are still collecting their big fat check.
So where do we go? I mean, we have a lawmaker who wants to go after criminals that he's never going to get his hands on. The reality of it is what I laid out, and what we're talking about here is how you deal with this stuff. So what are some steps healthcare facilities can take to start protecting sensitive information? And this article specifically, as I'm reading it, highlights human error in the Ascension Hospital ransomware attack, not human error being the cause there. Human error is the cause in a lot of ransomware attacks. So how can healthcare organizations better train their employees to prevent such incidents? So kind of a two-part question there. What are some things outside of security awareness training? And then what are some things within the security awareness training program that hospitals have that they can do to bolster up what their employees are doing, right? So what are your thoughts there?
My biggest thing is control the blast. Have something in place where things cannot just spread on your network. Like, that is just, the solutions are so simple these days that things can't just, like, we're dealing with something, well, not us, ARC solvers, but the city of North Miami is dealing with something because the mayor, his email, they got access to his Gmail. And then from there, they sent out an email to all of the public official employees to click on something. And then somebody clicked on it, and then it just spread. Had they had a way to just block that, problem solved. It's simple stuff that we talk about, generally speaking. It's simple. It's not that hoodie guy that we're just trying to, like, oh my gosh, he's so advanced. No.
Well, no, it is the hoodie guy, but the hoodie guy knows that he doesn't need to have a whole lot of skills in terms of, like, I think everybody thinks like these are like super genius programmer coders, like, can build anything on a computer. That's not, most of the time we're not dealing with those. They do exist. Most of them are working for a government, right? And they're doing very high level stuff, not deploying ransomware, right? The guys that are deploying ransomware are like just sitting there, sitting in a park somewhere, dreaming up ways of how they can get people to click on their phishing emails, right? It's not technical, it's psychological, right? What can we do, right? As crazy as it sounds, let's get access to the CEO's Gmail. And if we can get access to the CEO's Gmail, let's blast everybody in his company
Yep.
email from his Gmail and see if we can get them to click on anything.
Yep.
Most people are going to go, who would fall for that? Well, the city of North Miami has an employee who fell for it. And guess what? I see it all the time. I see shit come in from like Gmail accounts where people are like, did this really come from the CEO? Look at the from address.
Right.
Well, that's the from address. That's the email. That's his Gmail. Well, you shouldn't be using that in official business communication, number one. So what does that tell you? That the city of North Miami has a lack of policy that trains their employees that we don't do things this way.
And he may not have been using it. That is kind of a disturbing thing. So 365, Microsoft, if you go into the admin panel, it will tell you, hey, make it where your users can all reset their own passwords. How do they get to where they can reset their own passwords? They got to enter their phone and they got to enter their Gmail or their Yahoo or whatever, which allows them to reset their own passwords. Microsoft's pushing for that. So I could see the bad guys, wanting to get into this. And I was going to comment on something else. There's a lot hospitals can do, like ingesting all the data, looking at everything from a cybersecurity standpoint. But, we always make a joke, the three of us, if we go to ER or we go visit somebody in the hospital, what do? First thing I do when I walk in the room after say, hey, hi, how are you doing? When I'm sitting there, second thing I do is I look at the monitor in the room and I look to see what OS they're on. And we see a ton with Windows 7, which has been expired for 5 years-ish. We see Windows XP, which has now been expired for 10 years. But I will say a positive thing that I saw, I mentioned it on the show probably 6-8 months ago. We were in a hospital and the hospital had cybersecurity tips as screensavers. And they were things like this, don't action on a Gmail from the CEO. He's not going to send you an actual business email from his personal Gmail. But what I'm getting at is that they really need to raise awareness of cybersecurity within the hospital community. You have to create a culture of cybersecurity. We do this internally. We get a weird email. We take a screenshot. We post it in our company chat. We talk about it. I literally saw 2 today in my quarantine, but I took screenshots and put it in our company chat, and made little jokes and this and that. But all of that, along with the training, raises awareness, and then people are less likely to click on stuff like this, and it helps to remove some of the risk of human error.
Yeah,
go ahead. I was going to play devil's advocate real quick on this because McLaren Hospital has approximately 28,000 employees. Let's just say out of those 28, half of them have some type of device they're using every day, right? That's 15,000 employees, 13 hospitals. And when I looked up what happened in 2023 as far as the cyber attack that they had, they said that they didn't take security measures such as lack of encryption for sensitive data, insufficient network segmentation, and potentially outdated software and systems that were not fully patch or protected. So if I'm the IT director, I'm like, there's no way I can do this in a year to get this hospital back where it should be. So that could be another thing, is where they were in the process of doing it, but they just got hit from just a different angle that they just couldn't get to fast enough.
I'm going to say it's probably part of that. That's probably part of it. 100% is that they didn't get to the things they knew they needed to get to quick enough, because, a year is not a lot of time. And if you have a lot of gaps, it's going to take you a while to fill those gaps, depending on what your budget and your resources look like, for one, right? But at the end of the day, you're 100% right. I mean, the hackers that got them the first time, Andre, said we have backdoors all over the place in your network. Well, if this is the same group or a faction of that group, There's the proof, right? I think we're going to find out that this hospital, honestly didn't do a whole hell of a lot in the last 9 or 10 months. And I think that's what we're going to find out, unfortunately. So moving right along, let's get to the next. I'm going to kind of cover these next 2 articles because they're related, but we have the Jefferson County Clerk's Office and the city of Killeen. Is it Texas, Randy?
Killeen,
Texas.
Yep.
Fell victim to cyber attacks. And both have had, like I said, varying degrees of impact. That's why I'm kind of saying, like, at the beginning of the show, it's interesting because a lot of these attacks have a lot of different nuances and, details that are going on about them that, we're not seeing the same thing happening in any of them. They're all very different. But both incidents underscore the persistent threat of ransomware to hospitals, government agencies, anything that handles sensitive information of private people, citizens. That's who is a target. That's who we're seeing being hit. These attacks cause disruptions to essential services, a very common thing between municipal governments being hit and hospitals. And it highlights how citizens of the United States are really vulnerable to these attacks and how it can impact their communities and the services that support them in their community. The attacks impose significant financial burdens on these government entities that need to be covered by taxpayers. These costs include recovery for cost for recovery, for IT upgrades to improve things so it doesn't happen again, as we just talked about, and fees around ransomware payments. So, how do these 2 ransomware events compare to you guys? What do you guys see in terms of how they affect their communities?
Well, you got people. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Randy. I cut you off last time. Go ahead.
Well, so one of the things, a thread I see running through everything we've talked about today is both hospitals and governments have a wealth of personal information. And so there's that. The city of Killeen is right next to the largest Army base in the country, Fort Hood. And so there's probably 20,000 of their residents that are active duty military because they all live in Killeen, Belton, Temple, Copperas Cove. There's like 4 cities along there. They all live, unless they live on base, but most of them live off base. And, going back to like the previous, when the previous section, when Andre was talking about the mayor of that city in Miami, his personal Gmail. Well, the bad guys could use that information from Killeen to get into some personal Gmails, maybe of some generals or some high up officers, even some people in the military, just, your regular rank and file, quote unquote, that could be very detrimental to national security. So the thread I see running through all of these is the personal data is a gold mine for the criminals.
One thing I'm also seeing in these articles is that you have people going to pay their water bills and come to find out that they can only pay via cash, check or money order, but they can't pay with any type of like credit card. So basically they just have to leave something with them physically. So you're not updating your residents. You're not using any type of services to communicate with your residents. Don't come to City Hall to do anything unless it's essential. Don't waste your time because people are coming there to just swipe their credit card or whatever, and they're not accepting it. Another thing that I saw specifically with Jefferson County is you have the city clerk talking about CrowdStrike and cyber attack, which they're not linked in the sense of like he's confused. And also it also kind of leads me to say, was there some type of phishing email to say, hey, this is something related to CrowdStrike. We needed a click on this. And this is how they fell for it. The fact that he's mentioning CrowdStrike a couple of times tells me that something suspicious is there.
Related to that.
Yeah.
Not a bad observation. I agree. I kind of thought it was a head scratcher at first, and then you're kind of like, all right, when you see him mention it a few times, you're like, maybe there's something else there that it happened around that particular incident. So we have about 3-4 minutes left, guys. I'll kind of throw it to you to kind of, I like this next topic, the 74% one, but I don't know if we have time to cover it. I'm just going to mention real quick, to kind of parlay on the local government thing. The city of Columbus was also hit with a ransomware attack, and they refused to pay the ransom. And the group that stole the data put the information they stole on the dark web up for auction, and it didn't receive any bids.
Wow.
And that's not actually uncommon. And when that happens, then the cyber criminals just release the information publicly. So if nobody comes along and buys it, now I don't remember what the number was. It was 100,000 or 10,000, but there was a starting bid number and it got no bids. And I just wonder if they lowered that starting. I don't know what the theory is or business model is behind.
I have a theory.
Throwing a number out there, and then if you don't get it, you're just going to release it all to the public. Like if you don't get 10 grand or 100 grand, you're going to release it all. You're not going to try to sell it for like 2 grand or 1,000. I don't know, but the mayor of Columbus has come out and been like, "Hey, look, all the information they stole was encrypted," almost saying it like, "Look, they didn't get much. We did I did the right thing here. I made the right decision." Very ego-driven response, in my opinion. Right? Look what I did. The hackers got us. I decided not to pay the ransom. And look, all the information they have is encrypted. So they really didn't get much anyway. Right? Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, one day all that information could be decrypted at any point in time.
Yep.
So don't go running for re-election saying you beat the cyber criminals because all the data they got was encrypted. No, that can be decrypted. There are things called AI and quantum computing that's making it a lot easier to decrypt that stuff today than it was maybe 5 years ago.
Yep.
Right? So as Randy yeps me to death and tells me I'm right for everything, Mr. Mayor, I know you're not watching our podcast, but people that are know that I'm talking the truth here, right? And this guy,
because you're just saying so many things I want to comment on, like the quantum. When the criminals get full access to quantum computers, most of the encryption is going to fall. In fact, there's now quantum-proof encryption, which is being encouraged for everybody to switch to it. And because when quantum computing becomes widespread, they're going to be able to decrypt things relatively easy. So So if you do subscribe to like a dark web monitoring service and you get, hey, your information's been exposed, but your passwords is really long string of characters and not really your password. Well, it's really your password. It's just hidden behind those string of characters, and one day it'll be revealed. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's what we're saying, just to kind of break it down for you. So I think next week we'll start off the show with the topic of why 74% of ransomware victims are hit again, because we think that's a very high number, and we think it deserves some talking about. So we'll either make that the whole show or part of the show next week. But we're out of time for this week, and we will see everyone next week. Stay safe out there, and we appreciate everyone paying the fee. Take care.